time for me to vacate the premises. In other words, he taught me how to leave his house and stay gone. That was his job. It wasn't his job to make it comfortable for me. Now, because I was uncomfortable in his house, I was mad at him for what he was doing to me to get me out of his house. I didn't realize until I got out of his house that what he did was for my benefit, so I'm glad I left while we were still talking. Because then I could turn around and see that it wasn't hurting me, it was helping me. See, we get mad because we displace how people treat us. They say, Ray, you don't love us. Because I chastise you, don't mean I hate you. It means that I love you, and if I chastise your heart, I love you even more. Because I don't want you to make some of the same mistakes that maybe I have made or I've seen other folks made, and that's why parents have to be parents and children have to be children. And you got to understand that I might not be your friend right now, but if I do what I got to do, as they grow older, they will learn that it ain't me, but it's them, and forgiveness is imminent.
Come on, Doc. Come on, Doc. Bring a word.
I have to learn how to process that everything ain't against me.
Yes, sir.
Some things are for me.
Yes, sir.
And I have to open up my mind to be able to understand that it's for me and not against me. John 8, it says, but Jesus went to the Mount of Olives. Early in the morning, he came to the temple courts again. All the people came to him, and he sat down and began to teach them. The experts in the law and the Pharisees brought a woman who had been caught committing adultery. They made her stand in front of them and said to Jesus, teacher, you notice how when folks are wrong, they want to be correct. You know, they want to appeal to your innocence. No daggone well, they ain't listened to him yet, but now all of a sudden, teacher, this woman was caught in the very act of adultery. They allowing Satan to get up in there and trying to be smart, as they call it. In the law, Moses commanded us to stone to death such a woman. What then do you say? Now, they were asking this in an attempt to trap him so that they could bring changes against him. So you could see that Satan was very much in the midst. Jesus bent down. I love this narrative because it said, and he wrote on the ground with his finger. And I'm glad it didn't say what he wrote, but just the fact that he wrote. Sometimes we want to speak too fast. Sometimes you might need to write down some things and hatch some things out. So Jesus said, well, instead of me speaking to them, because sometimes when we speak to folk don't hear. So let me just write down, because when you write down, it makes it what? Concrete. Ain't nothing like some hard pavement telling you about yourself. Because some words will just blow in the wind. They'd come in one ear and go out the other ear. But when you can see your mess, when you can see the dirt, he says, when they persisted asking him, he stood up straight and replied, after writing, whoever among you is guiltless, may they first to throw a stone at her. All these folks who ain't trying to forgive people in their lives because they done wronged them or whatever the case may be, they holding it over their heads. And he wrote down, then he stood up and said, okay, now, which one of y'all who don't need to be forgiven, in other words? After that, it said that he stooped back down again and wrote on the ground some more. And I believe because they wasn't convinced yet enough. See, okay, Jesus, you only told part of the story. See, I believe, and I'm just reading into the text right here, but I believe that Jesus put down the part of their errors. And it caught their attention because no one had left. Then he stood up and said, whoever have not sinned, let him cast the first stone. Now, there were some folks who still had stones in their hands, and they was looking at the first part of what Jesus had wrote, and they was contemplating that that part really wasn't that bad. But if you know who Jesus is, you know he know the whole story. So he bent over again and wrote on the ground. Now, when they heard this, they began to drift away, one at a time, starting with the older ones, until Jesus was left alone with the woman standing before him. Jesus stood up straight and said to her, "Woman, where are they now?" Said, "I don't condemn you. Go. And from now on, sin no more." Forgiveness starts with yourself. Looking in your own backyard. It ain't that thing to hold over anybody, because you got to remember that when you hold it over anybody, it's also being held over you.